The following podcast is taken from a live broadcast on Inspire FM.
Hello, Assalamu alaikum, and welcome to the book club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and I'm really excited for today's show. We have a whole host of guests actually talking about a really special book called Life Outta Lockdown 2021. The little subheading is Beyond Closed Doors, and it's being put together by Dee Bailey. Now, some of you will remember we actually had Dee and some co-authors on last year during lockdown, and that was for the initial book, which was called Life in a Lockdown. And so I'm really delighted to have some of the co-authors here for this new sequel to the book, reflecting a little bit on how lockdown was for everybody, some of the things I guess that we've learned, and the time that we've had to reflect on the past couple of years, and some of the amazing work that has come out of it, I guess, in the writing and the poetry. So I'm really looking forward to today's show. So we are joined in the virtual studio today by Ronald, Pamela and Gary. And just before we head over to have a bit of a lovely chat with them, I'm going to give you a little bit of information about the book itself. So it's basically a really lovely, almost like an anthology, I would say, of different writers that have come together to reflect on how the past couple of years have been. So the foreword says, the pandemic was a leveler for everyone. Families and friends were lost and lifelong friendships found. I met the Life in a Lockdown women when I was approached by Dee to say a few words of inspiration to the women on a Zoom chat. However, they turned out to be my salvation. I instantly felt an affinity with all the women. All their characters shone through, the quiet, outspoken, quirky, and gregarious. What we all had in common was the trepidation we felt in the face of uncharted waters. I instantly gained a whole heap of sisters and was enveloped in love. We had an unspoken understanding that we would all go forward together or perish alone. That first meeting, I was to speak for 10 minutes. Quite a few hours later, I was still there, glued to the screen. I may have been a Lord Mayor, the woman who had it all together, but my fear and vulnerability were as raw as the women on that Zoom. They were my inspiration and pulled me through what would be one of the most testing periods of my life. I love and respect each and every one of these amazing women and have forged a lifelong friendship with them. Thank you for sharing your valuable time with me. So that foreword was written by Councillor Anna Rothery, who was the former Lord Mayor of Liverpool, which is a really, I think, lovely introduction to actually how many friendships and relationships that we've maybe all managed to build actually during lockdown as well. Now, Dee Bailey is the lady who has kind of behind, I guess, the vision for these books. And in her introduction, so she is the founder and CEO of Simply Dee's events. So the Life in a Lockdown Zooms began back in April 2020. Veronica Ebanks suggested we need to document these unprecedented times. So last year, Life in a Lockdown 2020 Behind Closed Doors was published. Currently, over 800 books worldwide have been sold. And friends and family have been asking, when is it coming? And I'm so proud to announce the sequel. This book features some new co-authors, friends we have met along our long lockdown journey. How was it for you? June 2020 to August 2021. Life has been a roller coaster for all of us. In this book, each of the authors shares their personal journey with you. Stories to give you hope, strength, and words of encouragement. You are not alone. So again, that's a really lovely introduction by Dee to this book, Life Outta Lockdown. And I'm really delighted to introduce our guests. So we have Ronald, Pamela, and Gary. So good morning.
Good morning.
It's so lovely. Yes, thank you so much. It's so lovely to have you on the book club show today. So maybe what I was really hoping was just to give a bit of insight into your own journey. So obviously I've read the introduction from Dee, but how has it been for you, especially now we're kind of obviously out of lockdown and things have slightly changed, maybe not quite going back to normal. Pamela, how about yourself, if we come to you first?
Well, for me, I was in Life in a Lockdown, book 1, and now being in book 2. And both my submissions were poems. So in 2020, I wrote Lockdown, Unlocked Emotions. And for book 2, I did find it quite challenging, to be honest, because I wasn't too sure what I wanted to write about. And it just came to me one day. I was on a walk, and I saw a tree, and I looked at it and I thought, if I was a tree, what tree would I be? And that sort of sparked something quite creative in me. And then as I sort of went about my week, I sort of had different messages, if you like, that then I put them together, which formed my poem. And my poem titled was Lockdown 2, Time for Cultivation, because for me, it was everything around me was so negative, and I wanted to plant positive seeds, because being drawn into it all, it was like I was losing myself, and that is what I didn't want to do. So yeah, for me, book 2 was about me, recultivating my mind.
Yeah, and that's such a actually beautiful kind of, I guess, reflection to share. And like what you mentioned about seeing this tree, did you feel that during lockdown you were kind of outdoors more, like when we were obviously allowed to be, and did you feel like that connection with nature in particular?
Yeah, because during lockdown, I used to just sit and look out my window, and I used to watch the trees. So, you know, one minute they were all green and beautiful, and next minute, you know, they'd shed. So it was like, well, we're a bit like the seasons, aren't we? So it made me become really, really reflective. And yeah, I wanted to be out in nature more. I felt like being in the house, I was being stifled. So yeah, and plus I live on my own, so I wanted that. I missed that face-to-face communication and that hug when I went out to see my friends. So yeah, I sort of expressed it all in my words.
Yeah, and I think echo so much of what you're saying. And I mean, I don't think I necessarily am a natural hugger, but I actually during lockdown really realized how much I missed hugs. So, you know, it was really, I think just having to pause, or being forced to pause, but then kind of finding, you know, the things that really matter is really important. And thank you for sharing that. And Ronald, how about yourself? If you've now had a bit of chance, obviously, especially through the book as well, to reflect, how was lockdown for you, and now that we reflect on the pandemic?
Initially it was very stressful and disorientating for me. It was equally a very educational and beautiful experience for me, because I started to appreciate things in life which I didn't notice before. I spent a lot of time with myself, my mind, and I learned to value life and appreciate life in a way that I didn't recognize it before. So while it was sad and stressful, it was also beautiful.
Yeah, and I think, you know, this, I know there's so many people that I've spoken to, the idea that, you know, it made us think of how much we were taking for granted almost. And, you know, it's kind of, and they just, I guess, you know, maybe repeat what I'm saying, but you know, like you said, it's valuing those things, isn't it? And the little things as well. So, and I completely feel what you're saying, the struggle, because I think I myself, you know, definitely struggled initially with such a, you know, I know the word, you know, and actually I think it's in one of the pieces, actually, maybe by Cecile, I can't remember, but he uses the word like unprecedented, and how much that word was used very initially in the pandemic. And I guess, you know, because it really was something so different that we were all experiencing, you know, as a collective, you know, globally. Gary, if I can come to you with the same question, now you've had a bit of time to reflect, how has it been?
Yeah, it's actually quite hard. Well, not hard, but it's interesting, because I can confess that Pam, after meeting Pam, she does give the best hugs, and I'm probably speculate, and that probably sums it up with lots of the things about lockdown. Bad things became worse. Everything became exaggerated in what we can do and what we can't do. And if a good time was camping in the garden with my son, because we couldn't go to any music festivals, it made it even better. But if we couldn't go and watch our local football team, it made watching it on TV even worse. And that's and that's it. Yeah, I would like to call myself a poet and a storyteller, and quite interesting. So I just finished collaborating with somebody from America, writing a poem called "It's the End of the World as We Know It," but we've changed it. It's not the end of the world now. It's unprecedented. And the poem I wrote in the book, because it since and still has in the most influence on me. I suffer from depression amongst other things, and the amount of times, if doctors are at the edge of feeling, I said, read this. Oh, now we get it. We now get your issues. And my poem, I took lines out of 2 or 3 lines out of every poem I've been commissioned or written between June and September to make this one poem. And what came out has been tearful, cathartic. I read it out in front of Pam yesterday, first time out live. I read it out on Zoom, and my eyes watered, not of tears of sadness, but of just feeling blessed by the people I saw in front of me.
No, thank you so much for sharing that, Gary. Such important points you've made, and actually I'd never thought about that, the idea that something, like you gave the example of football, whereas usually if you go and watch matches, actually watching on TV, it almost felt worse. And actually it's so true, especially I guess for people who maybe enjoy that kind of FaceTime and being in-person events and things like that. Actually not being able to do those things is I guess even more kind of difficult. But yeah, I mean the idea of writing, and actually that kind of maybe moves me on to the next question. And I've read all 3 of you, the chapters that you've written and the work that you've written, and it's so beautiful. And I guess I'm really interested in asking Pamela, if I come to you, is writing something that you've always been interested in, or was it just in particular for these 2 books that you were, contributing to?
I began writing in, I suppose I started writing about my emotions in about 2016, but then really got into expressing myself after I lost my auntie to cancer, who I cared for. And I just felt all this emotion just running around inside of me. And I'm an ex-drug and alcohol worker. So when I used to work with the young people, I used to say to them, do you know what? Sometimes it's better out than in. So maybe try writing it down, and you don't have to share it. You can do whatever, you can choose to do whatever you want with it. And I just remembered the day that I remember my aunt saying to me, sometimes you need to practice what you preach. And I just took pen to paper, and the first poem that I really wrote was called Honesty, and it was about me sitting here reflecting and having that conversation with myself about how honest I was being with my feelings, and whether I observed them and did I want them to stay? Were they negative? Were they positive? And it sort of stemmed from there. So when the first book came out, I'd already started to write a poem about lockdown and about how I was feeling then, because I'd been made redundant. So when it came to number 2, I always knew there was going to be a number 2, but that was the challenge. Does it take the same guys as number 1? But I just took it in a totally different direction. But I enjoyed writing it. I really did enjoy it, and I enjoyed the challenge.
And I guess it must be really interesting, I guess writing, like you said, for book 1 and then book 2, because obviously you're in completely different space, aren't you? Because obviously time's moved on and the situation's moved on, and but and I think it's interesting, coming back to I think it was Gary who mentioned this idea of catharsis, because obviously you write, and it's so lovely that you've kind of encouraged other people to write about their feelings, because actually there's so much vulnerability involved, isn't there?
Yeah,
because
yeah.
You're writing from such a personal space and then kind of putting it out in the world. Ronald, how about you? Is writing something that you've always done in poetry, or would you say it's a more recent thing?
I've always been into being creative, because I used to be a record producer and artist developer. So I was always into some form of writing, but it was never in respect of my own personal feelings and my own personal thoughts. And over the lockdown, I found myself, well, just before the lockdown, I had some health issues where I was being defined by the health issues and being stigmatized, I felt, to the extent that I couldn't communicate or talk to people. So I would actually communicate my thoughts on pieces of paper, which I would keep to myself. That was my conversations I couldn't have with other people. I used to have them on pieces of paper, and over time people saw what I was writing. They said, "Hey, that's poetry." I thought, "Yeah, really?" And it just became something more than thoughts and feelings which I would keep to myself, because people were encouraging me to share it. And the crunch came when I started to have conversations with Pamela, and she just was relentless about telling me I need to share my thoughts and feelings beyond myself. And hence we have my contribution to the book.
Yeah, and it's a lovely contribution to the book as well. And and I think it's really interesting, because sometimes those things that start off as just feelings and just putting thoughts onto paper, how I guess that dynamic changes as soon as you share with other people. And it's so nice, I guess, that you got the recognition, the encouragement of your work, the fact that this really is like poetry. And it's so interesting, actually, because yourself as an artist, whereas you said before you were kind of empowering and supporting other artists, but this is now more yourself and your own creativity, which is really lovely to hear. And again, we're kind of all talking about thoughts and feelings and emotions, and actually how difficult, even for people of color, especially Black people in our communities as well, actually, and particularly I'd say even the way the media portray Black men, and actually there's this whole notion of not kind of dehumanizing and not actually having that sort of empathy, so I think it's so lovely, actually, that you're able to share that and write it as well. Gary, maybe coming to you, same question really. Is writing something, I mean, you've mentioned, you kind of touched upon it, but I'm just really interested, how the whole process came about for you to contribute to this particular book.
I went to university to be a storyteller. Sounds like you make yourself a good liar, but that's from that I discovered poetry, open microphone, and then I'm trying to think, about 4 or 5 years, probably 6 years ago. No, after my first heart attack, and I realised I was quite good at it. But then the main thing I've always been, I understand it's creatives what change the world, what change thought processes, change governments and that. And then when I really thought, I'm going to start traveling. I literally went around the country learning about poetry and doing more, and to bring back to my hometown. I realised poetry is a medium which allows people safely to change things, and poetry's effect. But everything good in my life has resulted from poetry. I came in contact with Dee Bailey because of the bookcase thing she does. I now run 2 or 3 anti-racist organisations, but it's based around poetry with separate group. Sons and I separate group called Say It Louder, and we've now got 2 Say It Louders, one set up in Nashville. That's 3, one set here in England, one in Nashville and one in Melbourne. And we bring up not just artists together, looking at issues about race and misogyny, but we also bring politicians, pressure groups, and it's not just talking shops. So the whole poetry thing has been really powerful. And you talk about mental health, and one of the things which I've worked with Simply Dee's, Pamela and Cecile as well is Black people and mental health. And we've currently set up 2 or 3 programs. I'm now doing a couple of projects with Mind and Black Minds Matters. And that's all set up with, and every single one of the initial other poets, one's from Henry from Nashville, Croydon, we got a practitioner from Nottingham, and we also got, and the one is from Germany, an ex-Marine, and we've sort of working on setting up programs around poetry, addressing issues of mental health. So
yes,
we find it, I find it is probably more powerful tool than everything I had for Windrush. Somebody stole my poem, but gave it to an who then gave it to an MP, and it's read out in the House of Commons.
Oh wow!
And I just think it's such a powerful medium. And as when I read Ronald's and Pamela's stuff, and most of all, like yesterday and on an event, it brings people together just from different places and circumstances, which which I never dreamed of. This morning I've spoken to a professor from Maryland, and I thought he wanted to contact me about doing the next Say It Loud program, but he wanted to discuss some poetry I've written in a Scotland program. So at that point I'll be quiet because I can go on forever.
No, it's so amazing, actually. I mean, I guess firstly, Simply Dee's and kind of the platform, I guess that's created and connecting you all together, but then, going, I guess, across not just Luton, like, other towns and even, abroad. And, it's amazing, I guess. It's the ripple effects, I guess, isn't it? And completely agree with you, especially poetry. And I love poetry. I sometimes write poetry as well. And definitely, it's because you end up sharing almost like a common language. So even people who might not write poetry themselves, just reading something, it really takes you like really in depth into, experiences, and increases that empathy, which is so important. We know from like some reports and stuff how much that is in itself increased in people as well. But I guess I'd really like to know just before we head over to the break, like this idea of gravitating towards love songs and romantic creativity, and what kind of what was in your mind at that point when you were writing about those things? What is it that I guess you were kind of trying to connect to?
Well, when I talk about love songs, many people refer or assume love songs have something to do with relationships. But I just started to love so much about life, about people in general. Even myself, I started to love the strange behavior, or what was defined as my strange behavior. I started to love myself. And I started to just write about the things that I started to recognize, feel, and enjoy. And I enjoy the subject of love in respect of nature, communities, people. I just love the subject of love.
Yeah, and it's such a beautiful take actually on that. And you're right, because you immediately will start thinking about like romantic love or something like that, but self-love. And I know, again, that's a term that sometimes gets like bandied about a lot, self-love, but actually when you truly taking time out and showing yourself that, and appreciating I guess if we appreciate ourselves more, it's such an amazing thing to be able to do. Pamela, do you have any thoughts on Ronald's piece and what he's shared with us? Any reflections that you'd like to share?
I absolutely love Ronald's piece. If he would tell you that I absolutely hounded him, I actually turned up at his house with my computer in hand to help him sit and write this submission. So for me, to see how far Ronald has come, and to be our chapter 1, and that title to be I Found the Courage, it just makes me really proud of him, because even though what I say, he has a hidden disability. You just got to take the dis away because he's got the ability all the way.
Yeah, that's amazing. I'm getting goosebumps, Pamela, listening to you, because it's so true. And yeah, just that opening title, "It's True," is so fitting for the book to open up with that. Gary, did you want to share anything about what we're just discussing?
It's just, it wasn't just the words, it was the way Ronald delivered it. It was tranquil, giving a sense of peace in the chaos of life. I know the way Ronald just delivered it, he could have been reading the phone book or like it.
Yeah, there's definitely, it's so true. I think it's how you share and how you connect to others as you're reading, and then definitely Ronald did that. Thank you so much, Ronald, for sharing that. So we are heading over to the break, so we will be back in the second half, and we will hear a bit more about Pamela and Gary's piece that they've written as well. In the meantime, grab yourselves some tea and some biscuits maybe, and we'll be back in a few moments. Assalamu alaikum.
Assalamu alaikum, this is Atif Nawaz. Listen to Inspire FM shows in your time by heading over to inspirefm.org or listen on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.
Assalamu alaikum and welcome back to the Book Club show on Inspire 105.1 FM. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and today we are talking about our book Life Outta Lockdown 2021 Beyond Closed Doors. So this has been put together by Dee Bailey, who is the founder and CEO of Simply Dee's Events. And before the show, we were talking to our guests, Ronald, Gary and Pamela, about some of the pieces they've written, and also just taking time to reflect on how the pandemic's been and how obviously we were some of the experiences during lockdown itself. But this now is actually a sequel to the initial book, which was called Life in a Lockdown. And what I really wanted to do is actually just start this second half of the show talking particularly about the book cover itself. Now, it's a really, really beautiful book cover. So it's basically pictures of lots and lots of different doors, which are really colourful and vibrant, and different designs, and some look really modern and some are a bit more classic and old, and it's a whole it's kind of collage of doors, and it's really beautiful to look at. So I'm just going to ask, maybe if we come to Pamela, just to give our listeners a bit of insight into how that decision was made about using doors and the look of the book. I guess I'm really interested to know.
So in the first book, it was quite dark and we were all behind closed doors. So it was all quite gloomy. And we threw all the ideas out there as to how we want this book cover to look. And we decided that we wanted something that was bright, we wanted something that was vibrant. And when you look at those doors, as the book is titled Life Outta Lockdown 2021 Beyond Closed Doors, those doors are so vibrant, it's almost like we're stepping beyond that, and we want to see the brightness now beyond those closed doors, because in 2020 it was all about the darkness. So for us it was about coming out and seeing what's out there, and for each individual, what is going to be our new normal. So you can only do that, you can only do for yourself. So it's plant that springboard in your head, if you like, and look at those doors and say, what is beyond that? Where are we going from here?
Yeah, that's right. I love the idea what you used of a springboard, because I guess that's exactly what we need. And everyone's at different pace as well, because obviously some people I guess were affected by COVID much more than others, and obviously like you said, the darkness and the loss, there was so much negativity, and definitely, but now I guess we're starting to come out of it, and importance, I guess, of keeping hope, right? And be able to look beyond. And definitely, I think the book cover definitely kind of encapsulates that. Gary, do you have any particular thoughts about the book cover itself, and what kind of discussions were being had around
Yeah, I can remember staying out of the discussions because and just smiling at all in the WhatsApp group, all the different ideas what are going in, because it's just it was just beautiful watching the process go through. I thought, nah, not for me, the discussion. Sure. But the thing that I like about the covers so much, it reminds me of Brighton, all the all the doors and whatever. And I used to go, previous years I used to go down Brighton at least twice a year, just walk along the beach and just write. And so it was like seeing it now, it's almost like a torch. I was like showing the light.
Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I've been to Brighton, you're right, there's something very special about writing and walking, but even more so when each house and every door has a different character. And definitely, the book cover has that you can imagine, who might be living, behind that. But I guess more importantly, actually come back to Pamela's point, who might step out of that door, right? Because now we're kind of, coming out and we're going beyond the closed doors, which is really lovely. Ronald, how about yourself? Do you have any particular reflections on the book cover itself?
Not really. I was just an observer. But I did like the finished outcome. I thought it was very, very much what I couldn't explain in terms of sharing what it shares. No, I didn't. I wasn't involved with the process, even though I was invited to be involved with it.
Sure. But I think it's really lovely because, I introduced you initially in the first half as co-authors, but I mean, it's more than that, isn't it, Pamela? So, I guess all the writers came together. It was very much like a joint process, like almost like co-created, together as a group. Would that be right?
Yeah.
Could I say something? One reason why I wasn't too responsive to the invites to be involved with the process of picking perhaps the book cover or making a contribution to as things as they develop, because I was still to a degree in a state of surprise and shock that I was included in this process. It was just like so unbelievable after spending so much time not engaging with anyone and not being a part of any community activity. I just needed more convincing, and the convincing moment came when I saw the book. Before that, it was just like, wow, is it really going to happen?
Right. Yeah, no, I totally get that feeling. I think, almost like overwhelmed, I guess, at the idea that because yes, true, like to have your work published in a book, because you almost your work's immortalized, right, which is really almost like unnerving, and obviously completely deserved, Ronald and everybody else. And so no, I think it's I totally get that, but again, it's just really lovely that it's kind of a group. It was a group coming together to put this creation, out in the world, which is great. So it'd be really nice now. I know before in the first half we heard a little excerpt of Ronald's piece, and it'd be really lovely to invite Pamela. Would you be happy to read some of your piece, please?
Yeah, I'm happy to read some of mine. So my title is called Lockdown 2, Time for Cultivation. And I'm going to read this. But as I adapt within society, I sense confusion, stress, and anxiety amongst the youngsters that are around me. So I urge you to express your emotions that lead to unrest. the anger, the judgments you hide just eat you up inside, which progresses to internal stress, which builds up to mental distress that causes worry, fear, and despair, thinking that no one really cares. Search for the essence of who you are. Find your silver shadow. Be that shining star. Don't buy worry. Don't buy fear. Turn to the ones you trust and love and speak your truth in their ear. It's time to guide our life with positivity and relinquish adverse company that drains us physically, mentally, and emotionally, submitting signals that are not very clear to fit their agenda that they hold so dear. That's my part of the poem.
Thank you so much, and there's so much that you've kind of touched upon, even in the short kind of section that you've read. Now, again, like you mentioned before about maybe working with other people and getting them to talk about their feelings, but in terms of young people specifically, we've talked about the anxiety among them and trying to urge them to express their emotions. What do our young people need, do you think, in this current situation? So we're coming out now, but I assume they would have been quite impacted quite a lot. So is there any advice that you have in particular, or something that we can do?
They need to be listened to. And some of them have found lockdown really difficult. And one young person that springs to my mind at the moment, he's basically lost 2 years of education. So when lockdown happened, it was online classes. Now, he didn't like that change and he couldn't adapt to it. So he stopped going to lesson. But then when he went back to school and realised that, hang on a minute, I've lost nearly 2 years, my exams are now coming up, and what am I going to do? And even though he is achieving good grades, even though he's missed 2 years of school, he now suffers suicidal ideation because he feels that if I'm not here, I don't have to suffer that stress. But in a conversation with him, it was, well, have you thought about the other young people out there that are in the same boat as you, 2 years without education or attending school, and they're never going to achieve the grades that you're achieving, even though you've missed 2 years out of school. You're still achieving. And that, for me, is an accomplishment. And you should give yourself a pat on the back. And you just see the light bulb. I never thought about it like that. And it's as simple as that, as a young person thinking about, well, if I take my life now, I don't have to suffer that stress. But it's having that conversation and realize you're not the only one feeling that way. There's so many young people out there that they are so stressed out about how they're going to achieve the results that they actually want and what's going to happen to them in the future. And not only I feel that a lot of them, not only are they thinking that they're going to let themselves down, it's that thought that they're going to let their parents down. And right about now, it's about nurturing them and letting them know that, you know what, it wasn't your fault. So whatever you get, but you can continue to learn if that's what you want to do. But right about now, they really, really do need nurturing.
Yeah, for sure. And the advice of just listening is so important, isn't it? Because I think sometimes we forget that it is the simple things and allowing the space for young people to share their fears and to be safe enough, I guess, to share how they're feeling. And then, like you said, because only from that then we can potentially help to change their perspective on life, because of course it's stressful, and how difficult the struggles, and you're right. And thank you so much for just sharing that. And I think it's that active listening as well, as being really present with a young person when they're sharing, which again, in this life of like technology and distractions and all these things, we sometimes I think we just need to let that go.
Sometimes miss that communication, and sometimes they don't know how to verbalize how they're feeling, because we're so used to saying, oh, we're okay, everything's okay. But sometimes when they're withdrawn and they're not talking, that's another sign that what's going on, how can I help you? Because I've just noticed that you're just withdrawing. A lot of young people have just taken to their rooms and just go to sleep, because it's easier to deal with life that way. When they wake up, it's passed them by. But it's sad. It's sad to see so many of them hurting.
Absolutely. And no, definitely. And I think keeping a lookout for the silences as well, right? So it's not always the misbehavior. Sometimes you're right, it can be the opposite, and it's kind of going inside yourself, and it's probably pick that up. No, thank you, Pamela, for that. So I think I'd really like now to come to Gary, if you'd be happy to please to share some of your piece as well.
Your last conversation sort of determined what part I was going, because I personally think that one thing what we can't do to our young people is not more than not this. We can't kill hope. We can't kill hope, because we're so good at doing that with watching the news and that sort of thing. But I've seen young people. I met one yesterday, and they've got the tools. The elders seem to kill this, or no, you can't use that kind. But they've got the tools. They've got knowledge we didn't have. Anyway, I'm going to read probably the last part of my poem, the good part. And most of this poem has been very cathartic to me, and it's helped me more so than ever get various messages across. But the last bit first. Time for us to be safe in pain. We are still divided in so many ways. Life will never be the same. But as we blow out the final candle flame, let us be the light. I'm saying no to injustice and yes to fair play. Come to terms with being a caregiver and no room for an imposter. I will nurture all those withering flowers, be a beacon for kindness, a 21st century torchbearer. Turn the other cheek, compare.com the likeness, not letting my grieving stop me from believing. Living a life that is golden. I am a child of destiny, yes, with the same old pain, but I'm a believer, armed with a torch, a notebook and pen. I want to see 10 million epitaphs to say on the yellow strap line, breaking news. I've got a lot to say. Read on to the next chapter.
Amen.
And turn the other page. Amen.
Amen. That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that, Gary. And you know what really stood out to me when you read that was the bit where you were, let us be the light. Because, gosh, that's such a powerful statement. I mean, all of it was powerful, but that in particular, for some reason, really, because what we were talking about before with Pamela, being in lockdown and the darkness and those feelings, but actually now, trying to not just look for the light, but, be the light. Because God, imagine if we were all able to be like, those torchbearers, like you said, you know, and potentially the profound effect that would have. Yeah, I mean, it's really, really beautiful. And I don't know, I kind of feel like I should invite maybe Ronald or Pamela to share something that they maybe stood out for them in this poem. Ronald, maybe yourself?
With the poem that was just read to you.
Yes, please. Yeah.
I just like anything that implies light. You know, the word light just makes you think less than confined. You know, we confine our thoughts and our feelings so much in the valley of darkness. So the use of light and shining light, that stays with me, you know, because I want to try to shine light into everything. Most of what I think and feel in life, I need to put some beauty in it. And I think light is a reflection of beauty.
Yeah.
Light, yes.
Yeah, that's a lovely way of putting it. I think you're right. Yeah, I mean, completely agree with you. Pamela, how about yourself on Gary's piece?
On Gary's piece, the bit that I really liked, that stood out for me was, I'm saying no to injustice and yes to fair play. Come to terms with being a caregiver, no room for an imposter. I absolutely love that.
Yeah.
And yeah, just that for me just sums up what Simply Dee's is all about, really, which is keeping it real.
Yeah.
We don't have time for, you know, there's no time for the imposters, because really and truly the only person you can be is you.
Yeah.
And I can remember reading a poster, and it says, because be yourself, because everybody else is taken.
Yeah.
So yeah, that really stood out for me.
Yeah, definitely. And again, just the power in saying, you know, I'm saying no to injustice, and especially that we only have to look around us. I mean, I guess there was injustice during the pandemic. You could see how some communities were much more affected, and you know, than others. And even now, in terms of I guess the refugee crisis now in particular, I guess, with what's going on with Ukraine, but obviously all the wars that are still going on in different countries, which maybe haven't had the same kind of, I guess, sympathy. I don't really know what word to use, but yeah, definitely this idea of saying no to justice. And Gary, so obviously, because it's your piece and coming back to you, is there kind of, you know, it's only because some of the word, you know, you're talking kind of about light and turning the other cheek, and you mentioned epitaphs and stuff. You know, does faith, your own faith or anything, play a particular role, I guess, in writing or in your outlook on life?
Yeah, well, a mantra for all my poetry and what right is Proverbs 18:21, and it basically says, choose your words carefully, because the power of tongue can kill or give life. But that bit, let us be the light, that was taken from the poem which was used for Windward's Day. Because I've mentioned before, 2 lines are taken from every poem I wrote. And I can remember coming to terms writing that poem was that so many people just, you know, even look what's happening now, but it all starts, if everyone starts with doing what is right, wars don't, not the bigger things don't happen, and it can reveal from just not pushing into a queue. And it was that bit as we come out, that was coming out of the pandemic, and it was like a free for all. We're free, but actually we don't be careful while we're running out the shop door, that we're not trampling over people. And let's try and listen to people. And my story is not as bad as yours. And that's another reason why I found light when I first read Ronald's poem. And so it's there.
Yeah, definitely. No, absolutely. And I think, it's so important. I guess we take those things which are important to us and really go in, I guess really deep inside ourselves and able to share these things. And no, it's a lovely piece. Thank you again, Gary, for sharing that and your thoughts. So we are heading now to the end of the show. Maybe just before we end though, so obviously we were talking today about Life Out of Lockdown 2021 Beyond Closed Doors. Pamela, just very quickly, where can people purchase the book or get hold of their copy, and where could they follow kind of all the work that you are all doing with Simply Dee's?
So the book can be purchased on Amazon.
Mm-hmm.
And if they know any of the authors, they can DM the authors and receive a signed copy. They can follow us at Simply Dee's events, CIC, I believe, on Facebook and on Instagram. And there is a Life in a Lockdown page on Facebook.
Fantastic.
And Instagram. So yeah.
Brilliant. Okay, so thank you. Yeah, so those are the socials. So you can grab a copy online from Amazon, or get in touch, obviously, maybe through the Facebook pages as well. Fantastic. Thank you so much, Ronald, Gary, and Pamela, for your time this morning, for sharing, your beautiful work and your lovely contributions as well to the conversations. It's definitely given me a sense of hope going forward, which is, I know was something we've been talking about, and hopefully this is something we can continue connecting with each other, sharing our work, and just looking forward, and just like I said in Gary's piece as well, just being the light for others in the community, in our families, friends, etc. So important that we're able to play a part in that. Yes, listeners, that was Life Outta Lockdown 2021 Beyond Closed Doors. My name is Imrana Mahmood, and this was the Book Club Show. I will be back in a couple of weeks with a new book and a different guest. And also I'm putting together a lovely program for Ramadan, inshallah, as well. So I hope to connect with you soon. Assalamu alaikum.
Thank you for listening to our podcast. Why not tune in to our live stream at inspirefm.org and follow and subscribe to our social media platforms at Inspire FM Luton.